It's around 5:20 in the evening, which means there's about 30 minutes of useful light left, and that also means that you get a light show. The coloring is still nice and bright, at least for about 10 minutes, assuming no cloud comes in and destroys that opportunity. You can see now that the trees are bare, where the outline of that stream is straight ahead. You can see it because it's darker than everything around it. And then it's off in this direction. It's harder to see, but it curves over and then goes in the direction my finger's pointed for a longer way. You can't see it as well in this direction, but it's there. One thing of interest to talk about today as the plane flies by, you might be able to see it as it passes by. Anyway, variable consideration is very interesting to think about. It has a lot of things to teach us about how the world works. If we think about what the acquisition of knowledge really is, it's really our ability to consider many variables and to come up with a reasoned response to those variables. One of the major goals of college is to teach and expose you to many variables. Once you have an exposure to many variables or ideas, you can better understand the world. People that have a limited sense for the world are typically people that have a limited exposure to variables. If you wanted to manipulate somebody, the best way to do this is to limit their exposure to variables, to make them think that there are only a few answers to their questions instead of what is much more likely to be, and that is that there are many potential avenues of expression and many different answers to questions. This has many implications, but its greatest implication can be seen in politics, because in politics, or at least a representative democracy, everyone gets a vote, regardless of how well informed they are on specific issues. If you are the type of person who has been exposed to the idea that there are many variables to consider in life, then in my opinion, you are going to be a more informed voter than somebody who doesn't have the same experience of being exposed to many variables. Now, one of the reasons why being exposed to many variables is important, especially in voting, is because when you are exposed to many variables, you tend to be able to more properly give weight to different ideas. If you can properly give weight to different ideas, you stand in stark contrast to someone who holds more radical ideas. Because the person that holds radical ideas is a person who is most likely unwilling or unable to accept that ideas should be given different weights. I do not see how, for example, a single issue voter can be said to be properly weighing out all the different variables in life. For someone to say, for example, that to be a single issue voter based on the idea of being pro-life is a proper way of voting is kind of crazy to me. Being pro-life may be important to people, but that in no way should outstrip all the other considerations that should be given while casting a vote. You can hold a belief, and you can firmly hold that belief. But to give that belief absolute power over all other issues of concern is a crazy stance to take. If we were to go with something less controversial than being pro-life or not being pro-life, we can make the same argument over taxes. Some people are single-issue voters just on that issue alone. They believe that whichever party is going to deliver on a lower tax ideal is the party to vote for, irrespective of other positions. I would argue that this inability or unwillingness to give proper weight to different ideas is one of the major stumbling blocks of our society. It is one of the major ways politicians can manipulate the public. People like to rag on college education, saying that it's unnecessary. However, in being college educated, you are much more likely to give proper weight to ideas, or at least accept the premise that you can give different weights to different ideas. If you are unwilling to accept this idea in itself, you open yourself up for people of bad intentions to take advantage of you. Say, for example, you were a single issue voter and you really cared about deregulation of the federal government. So you were going to vote for the party that made it a promise to deregulate. Now, fast forward. Say that you live in a town where industry is heavy. You are no longer protected by the federal government because the regulations which have curtailed environmental pollution have been cut at your desire, essentially, which you could perceive as a good thing. But fast forward even more down the line, fast forward in time to a time where you may have developed cancer, and that cancer, we could say, was largely attributable to your exposure to industrial pollutants. We can see, in this case, that being a single issue voter may have helped you in the short run, economically, but in the long run, it has had a negative impact on your health. To have the freedom and ability to cast a vote is a tremendous gift. And yes, of course, everyone is free to vote how they wish. But in an ideal world, people would make truly informed decisions, weighing not only one, but multiple factors when making that decision. Everything in life is multivariable or multifactorial. You cannot limit your experience in life to a handful of variables and then claim to have lived an enlightened life. There's a bird right in front of the camera, just chilling there. That's a pretty nice shot. I just moved. To live an enlightened life is one where you constantly struggle to give weight to varying ideas. That is not to say that you should get bogged down by a myriad of ideas, but you must understand the complexity of life and not diminish it unnecessarily. One of the greatest examples of this currently is the war going on between Israel and Hamas. There is no simple right or wrong to this conflict. It is multivariable, and its long-lasting temporal nature makes it all the more complicating. Some people will argue that, for example, Israel bombing a refugee camp in order to kill a Hamas leader is justified. And some people will argue that it is not. I do not necessarily have a strong opinion on this. All I'll say is that war makes monsters of us all. given different circumstances, that means circumstances changing all the time. If we accept this, then we must accept that there is no absolute right or wrong. Right or wrong can exist, but they only exist in a society temporally. Time is a major factor in life. I think if people thought more about time and what it actually is, people would understand the world more. I have a relational concept of what time is. To the best of my understanding, that means the passage of time is something that represents the changing relation between two or more things. In this sense, change is constant. Change is inevitable. Change forms the fabric of the universe. So it would only make sense that societal attitudes and everything that runs forth from that are temporal in nature. One of the interesting things to think about is technology's impact on war and other conflicts. Will we get to a point in the future where technology makes us desensitized to killing? It is my belief that primitive technologies being used to kill people invoke a more visceral response than, let's say, using a guided missile to destroy a building which kills 1,000 people. In the example where a bomb is used to kill 1,000 people, I believe that is a more sanitized, more acceptable way of essentially being a monster. I believe that as society progresses in time and technology improves, we will struggle ever more in our abilities not to dehumanize people, not to become so far removed from the sufferings of war that we cause. Yes, we can and do video the actions of war, which bring a sense of war to our homes. And that does increase understanding. However, advancements in technology are currently and will in the future serve to muddle the way that we see and justify war. In my opinion, we should not be able to drop a massive bomb on a civilian population and then just act as if that was normal because we achieved our goal in killing a terrorist leader. Now, I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong. I'm just saying that that is abnormal behavior. And it is up to society to determine if we want to continue praising this abnormal behavior. The tactics of Hamas are, of course, abnormal. But we also must not be afraid to say that the tactics of the Israeli military are also abnormal. The tactics of the Israeli government have been abnormal towards the Palestinians for many, many, many decades. It is one thing for a society to act abnormally towards another society. But if a society does this, say Israel engages in apartheid of the Palestinians, then we cannot and should not act shocked when the Palestinians act or Hamas acts in an abnormal way towards that apartheid. Because as we see, acting abnormally begets more abnormal behavior. I believe that you can call something abnormal without saying whether something is good or bad. But in this instance, it is very hard to distinguish between abnormal behavior and what one might consider evil. One side is not more justified in their doings than the other. I firmly believe this. They are both at fault. The difference being that one society is more technologically advanced than the other, which gives that society, being Israel, the veneer of being civilized in their actions. They can dress up their apartheid in governmental speak. But that doesn't make their actions normal. In my opinion, if a technologically advanced society and a society which is more primitive have a conflict, then the technological society will automatically be given more deference than the more primitive society. And this is a failing of humankind. Technology and being civilized does not give you a license to hurt other people just because you're in a position to be able to do so. If anything, being more technologically advanced and more governmentally formed than another society gives you greater responsibility to act in a normal way. To act in a way that is above reproach. To, as the saying goes, take the high road and not act beneath you. Technology is what you make it. It doesn't make you better or worse than other people. Your application of technology, however, can have lasting consequences on innocent people. I think that should just be remembered because it's going to be more apparent as time goes by that the incorrect application of technology could very well end humankind. All the nice coloring is gone. You get like 15 minutes of nice coloring and then it's over. There's nothing interesting in filming the sky when the sun is not in its rise or fall period, meaning morning or evening. The change in light is what makes things interesting. That might also be why, at least from a subjective point of view, you could make the argument that beauty is change. It's interesting the things you come up with if you just keep talking. If you're good enough at articulating positions, one idea will lead to the next. When philosophy teachers say the best way to do philosophy or learn philosophy is just to do philosophy, it never made sense to me. But I think if they were to explain it more specifically, they would say, just have a starting idea and keep talking or keep writing and see what branches off from that initial idea. You might surprise yourself. That's why I said in a previous video that if you're unsure of what you're good at, then turn on a camera and just start talking and see what kind of ideas you have an inclination to express. You'll get a much better understanding for what you're good at and your perspectives on the world. the greatest gift of philosophy is to show people what they have an interest in, if they don't already know, that is. I feel like most people that don't know what they have an interest in, it's not because they don't have interest. It's because they have so many interlocking interests that it's hard to pin down in a single word or a couple words what that interest is. Talking to a camera helps elucidate those interests. If you do it over time, you'll have a much better understanding of what your life is about. It was kind of interesting. I had a YouTube viewer of mine say something that I've been thinking about. When I would talk about the things that cerebral palsy takes away, in terms of having a job or other responsibilities, the YouTube viewer said something to the effect of, well, yes, I agree with that, but also, as a result of your disability, you don't have to worry about some of the things that other people worry about. And that is true. And I think that is demonstrated by the following. Because I do not necessarily have a future where I have to worry about the prospect of getting a job or taking care of others. I can A, spend time thinking, and I can B, say things which may not be taken well by others. People where they're in a position where they have things to lose are much more cautious and much more restrictive in the ideas and things they can say. I, on the other hand, have never held this restriction. I do not care if the ideas I have are seen as abrasive, as long as they serve a purpose to inform. And I do think that is a position to be valued. Even if that position came as a result of the limitations a disability places on me. Anyway, I think that's going to be the end, because as of right now, I believe I am out of things to say. I think the most important thing I said today was that war makes monsters of us all. So, don't forget that. As a plane approaches, that's a cool shot. And with an inability to top that, I think I'll end the video here.